Jin Park stood at the viewing window of the Stellar Pioneer, staring at the space station that floated before them. The station was huge, about 3 kilometers long, and shaped like a perfect wheel with 8 spokes connecting to a central hub. Its silver surface sparkled under the light of nearby stars, looking as new as if it had been built yesterday. But that was impossible. According to their scans, this station was over 5,000 years old. Beautiful, isn't it? Captain Tawan's voice came from behind him. The preservation is remarkable. Hejin nodded slowly, but something felt off. As the ship's security chief, he had learned to trust his gut feelings. Too remarkable, he said quietly. It's like looking at a photograph of food instead of real food. Everything is too perfect. The captain raised an eyebrow. Explain. I can't, sir. Not really. Hejin ran a hand through his short black hair, frustrated at not being able to put his feelings into words. It's just wrong somehow. Their conversation was interrupted by the soft whirring sound that always announced the arrival of their Meridian science officer. The crystalline being glided into the room on its hovering platform, its faceted body reflecting rainbow patterns on the walls. Chief Park's assessment is illogical, the Meridian said, its translation device converting its thoughts into words. Our scans show no structural damage, no radiation leaks, and no signs of hostile technology. The station's preservation systems are simply more advanced than anything we have encountered before. Hejin turned to face the alien. With respect, Officer Crystal Song, sometimes humans can sense dangers that don't show up on scans. Ah yes, the famous human intuition. The Meridian's tone managed to convey skepticism despite coming from a machine. A remnant of your evolutionary past, much like your appendix. Useful once, perhaps, but no longer needed in an age of science. Before Hejin could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain, it was Jisoo Lee, their xenobiologist. You need to see this. We found something in the initial probe data. On our way, Captain Tawan replied. He gestured for Hejin and Crystal Song to follow him to the science lab. They found Jisoo bent over her holographic display, her long hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Engineer Daeho Kim stood next to her, his usually cheerful face serious as he studied the readings. Look at this, Jisoo said, pointing to a series of patterns on her screen. The station's outer hull is covered in microscopic etchings. They form repeating patterns, but they're so small and so precise that they must have been made by machines. Are they writing? The captain asked. Maybe. Or art. Or, Jisoo hesitated. Or warnings. Crystal Song moved closer to the display. The patterns appear random. They follow no mathematical sequence we can identify. That's just it, Daeho spoke up. They're too random. Natural randomness usually has hidden patterns, but this, he shook his head. It's like someone worked very hard to make sure these markings couldn't be decoded by normal means. Hejin felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. In his 15 years of space security work, he had learned that anything trying too hard to hide its meaning usually had something dangerous to hide. Captain, he said, I recommend we approach this with maximum caution. Full containment protocols, no direct contact until we've done every possible remote scan. Crystal Song's crystalline body flickered with patterns that Hejin had learned meant frustration. That would delay our research by at least 3 days. The station is clearly safe. Its automated systems are still running perfectly after 5,000 years. Think of what we could learn. The captain looked at each of them in turn. The concerned security chief, the excited but cautious scientist, and the frustrated Meridian officer. Finally, he spoke. We'll split the difference. Full containment protocols for 24 hours while we run detailed scans. After that, if we find nothing dangerous, we'll send in exploration teams. But he held up a hand to stop Crystal Song's objection. Teams will include both security personnel and scientists. And everyone will wear full environmental suits with independent air supplies. A waste of resources, Crystal Song said, but acceptable. As the others left to prepare for the scans, Jin stayed behind to study the station through the lab's viewing window. The longer he looked at it, the stronger his feeling of wrongness grew. It wasn't just that the station was too well preserved. It was something else, something about its very design. You feel it too, don't you? Daho had stayed behind as well, moving to stand beside him at the window. The wrongness, yes. Jin turned to look at his friend. The layout bothers me. Those 8 spokes. They're not really spokes. Daho finished his thought. They're more like channels. Like the station is designed to guide something inward toward that central hub. They stood in silence for a moment, both staring at the beautiful, perfect wrong station. The Meridians think we're being superstitious, Daho said finally. Maybe we are. But you know what? In all my years of engineering, I've never regretted being too careful. I have regretted not listening to my gut. Jin nodded. I'll talk to the security teams. We'll do more than just wear environmental suits. We'll set up emergency teleport beacons every 50 meters as we explore. If something goes wrong, we'll be able to get our people out fast. Good idea. I'll check all the suit systems myself. Twice. Daho managed a small smile. Better to be called paranoid than to be called dead, right? As they left to make their preparations, neither man noticed a tiny change in the station. For just a moment, a pattern of lights had flickered across its surface, too fast and too faint for human eyes to see. But if they had seen it, they might have recognized it. It looked exactly like a smile. That evening, as Jin filed his security reports, he added a personal note. Despite all scan data showing the station to be safe, multiple crew members report feelings of unease. While this could be dismissed as normal caution toward the unknown, in my experience, when multiple humans independently report that something feels wrong, it usually is wrong. We just haven't figured out why yet. He paused, then added one final line. I hope we figure it out before it's too late. Then he saved the report and went to help his teams prepare for tomorrow's exploration. Whatever secrets the station held, they would face them as ready as they could be. But in his dreams that night, Jin saw the station again. And in his dreams, it wasn't just smiling. It was laughing. The next morning, Daho Kim sat in the engineering control room, frowning at his screens. He had been watching the station's power readings for 6 hours straight, and something wasn't right. The numbers all looked normal. That was the problem. They looked too normal. You're going to hurt your eyes if you keep staring at those readings, Jisoo said as she walked in with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Daho, who took it gratefully. Look at this, he said, pointing to the screen. What do you see? Jisoo leaned closer. Power readings from the station. They're stable. Isn't that good? Too stable. Power systems always have tiny fluctuations, even the best ones. But these, he pulled up a graph. These are perfect, like someone drew them with a ruler. Before Jisoo could respond, Crystal Song glided into the room. Engineer Kim, your concern is unnecessary. The station's power system is simply more advanced than ours. Its stability is a sign of superior technology. No, Daho shook his head. Even quantum systems have variations. This is like looking at a picture of a heart monitor instead of a real one. The picture looks perfect, but real life has small changes. Hajin walked in just then, dressed in his environmental suit and carrying his helmet. Time for the first exploration team to head out. Daho, are you ready? Just a minute. Daho saved his readings and stood up. I want to show you something first. He pulled up a new display, showing 8 lines flowing toward a center point. This is the power flow in the station. Notice anything? Hajin studied the display. It all flows inward, toward the hub. Exactly. But what's powering the outer sections? There should be return flows, distribution networks. It's like Daho paused, searching for the right words. It's like the station is hungry, like it's pulling everything to its center. Crystal Song's translation device made a sound that might have been a sigh. You humans, and your metaphors. The station is not hungry. It is a machine. A very advanced machine, but still just a machine. Then explain these readings, Daho challenged, pointing to a new set of numbers. The power flow increases every time we scan the station, like it's responding to our presence. Automatic systems activating to accommodate visitors, Crystal Song said dismissively. Now we should proceed with the exploration. Captain Tawan is waiting. They made their way to the airlock where the first team was gathering. Captain Tawan stood with 4 security officers and 2 science specialists, all in environmental suits. The captain's face was serious as he went over the final checklist. Remember, he said, we stay together. No one goes off alone. Emergency beacons every 50 meters, as Chief Park ordered. Full sensor recordings at all times. If anyone feels something is wrong, we pull back immediately. Questions? No one had any questions. They had all been briefed thoroughly, and Heijin's security teams had drilled the emergency procedures until they could do them in their sleep. The airlock cycle took 3 minutes. When the outer door opened, they found themselves looking down a perfectly clean corridor. The walls were a soft white color that seemed to glow from within. Their boots made no sound on the floor, despite being metal on metal. Sound dampening technology, one of the science specialists whispered. Incredible. They moved forward slowly, placing emergency beacons as they went. Hajin and his security team kept their weapons ready, even though scans showed no threats. Better to be called paranoid than to be caught unprepared. Jisoo stopped every few meters to take samples and readings. The walls, she said after her 3rd stop. They're covered in those microscopic patterns we saw. But they're different here, more organized. Different how? Captain Tawan asked. On the outside, they seemed random. Here, they formed spiral patterns, all pointing inward toward the hub. She looked up from her instruments, just like the power flows Daho found. Daho, who had been checking power readings as they walked, suddenly stopped. Captain, he said, his voice tense. The power levels just jumped, by exactly 23.7%. Cause? Unknown, but he checked another reading. It happened the moment Jisoo mentioned the patterns pointing inward, like the station was listening. Crystal Song, who had insisted on joining the exploration team, moved forward. Impossible. Sound waves cannot trigger power fluctuations in this way. Perhaps your instruments are malfunctioning. They're not malfunctioning, Daho said firmly. I checked them 3 times before we left the ship. Something about this station is responding to us, to our presence, to our words. As if to prove his point, the lights in the corridor dimmed slightly, then brightened again. The change was so subtle that they might not have noticed it if they hadn't been paying such close attention. Just automatic systems, Crystal Song insisted, adjusting to our presence. Then why did the adjustment happen when we talked about this station listening? He asked. That's not random. That's response. They continued forward, but more slowly now. Every few meters, Daho reported another precise power increase. Always the same amount, 23.7%. Always after someone spoke about the station's strange features. After about 20 minutes, they reached a junction where 3 corridors met. All 3 looked identical, but Jisu's instruments showed something strange. The patterns are different here, she said, studying her readings. I don't know how to describe it. More urgent. The spirals are tighter, more densely packed. Which way do they point? He asked, though he thought he already knew the answer. All 3 corridors have patterns pointing to the left path. Jisu looked up, toward the central hub. Captain Tawan considered this information. It could be a navigation system, he said, helping people find their way to the center. Or hurting them, He said quietly. Before anyone could respond to that uncomfortable suggestion, all their suit radios crackled with static. Through the noise, they heard a voice from the ship. Captain, we're picking up some strange readings from the station's outer ring. Energy levels are rising in a wave pattern, following your path. It's like the station is waking up behind you. The captain made a quick decision. Back to the ship. Now, we'll analyze what we've learned before we go any further. As they turned to leave, Daho checked his readings one last time. The power levels dropped by exactly 23.7%. He couldn't shake the feeling that the station was disappointed to see them go. Back on the ship, they gathered in the main conference room to discuss their findings. The room's large windows gave them a clear view of the station, still spinning slowly in space, still looking perfectly preserved and perfectly wrong. The patterns, the power flows, the responsive lighting, Heijin summarized. It's all designed to draw visitors toward the center. The question is, why? For their own preservation, obviously, Crystal Song said. The station is a museum, a repository of knowledge. Of course it wants visitors to reach its central database. Then why hide the patterns? Daho asked. Why make them so small they can barely be seen? Why not just put up signs saying, this way to the knowledge? And why, Jisu added, does it feel like we're being hunted instead of guided? The captain looked around the table at his crew. The humans all showed signs of unease. Slightly elevated heart rates, dilated pupils, minimal fidgeting. All subtle signs that their instincts were warning them of danger. The meridian, by contrast, remained perfectly still, perfectly logical, and perfectly convinced that they were all overreacting. We'll continue the exploration tomorrow, Captain Tawan decided. But with additional precautions. I want double emergency beacons, backup power supplies for all suits, and constant monitoring of power fluctuations. If the station is really just a museum, it can wait another day while we make sure we're safe. As the meeting broke up, He stayed behind to stare at the station through the window. In the reflection of the glass, he saw Jisu come up beside him. You know what's strange, she said softly. In all our scans, in all our explorations, we haven't found a single sign of the people who built this place. No personal items, no decorations, no signs of daily life. It's like they were erased, He finished, or absorbed. They stood in silence, watching the beautiful, perfect, hungry station spin slowly in the void. Tomorrow they would go back inside, go deeper, try to unlock its mysteries. But tonight, in their dreams, they would all hear the station calling them home. And in the morning, none of them would remember that in their dreams, they had wanted to answer that call. The second day of exploration started with a discovery. Jisoo was checking her morning scans when she noticed something that made her spill her coffee. "Captain," she called over the ship's comm system. "The patterns on the station's walls, they've changed overnight." 10 minutes later, the senior crew gathered in the science lab. Jisoo's screen showed detailed comparisons of the wall patterns from yesterday and today. "See here." She pointed to the microscopic markings. Yesterday, they were spiral patterns. Now they're more like waves, and they're moving faster toward the center. "Moving?" Hojin leaned closer to the screen. "The patterns are moving." "Not physically moving," Jisoo explained. "But their design has changed to show more movement, like when artists draw lines to show which way the wind is blowing." Crystal Song's crystalline body flickered with patterns that suggested deep interest. "Fascinating. The station must have adaptive decoration systems. Truly remarkable technology." "Or it's getting impatient," Daho said quietly. He had dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept well. In truth, none of the humans looked well-rested. They had all had strange dreams, though none of them wanted to talk about them. Captain Tawon studied the new scans carefully. "We need to understand what's in that central hub," he said finally. "But we go carefully. Full security team, emergency beacons every 25 meters instead of 50, and constant communication with the ship." The exploration team entered the station an hour later. This time, they took the left corridor at the junction, the one that all the patterns pointed toward. As they walked, their helmet lights showed the walls shimming slightly, like sunlight on water. "Power levels are rising," Daho reported, watching his instruments. "Still an exact 23.7% jumps, but faster now. Every 30 seconds instead of when we speak." They passed through several more junctions, each one offering 3 paths, but always with the patterns pointing them toward the center. After 20 minutes of walking, they reached a large circular room. "This is it," Jisoo said, checking her map display. "The central hub." The room was enormous, at least 50 meters across, with a dome ceiling that seemed to glow with its own light. But what caught everyone's attention was the structure in the center. It looked like a garden of crystal trees, each one about 3 meters tall, growing from the floor and reaching toward the ceiling. The crystals glowed with soft blue light that pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. "Beautiful," Crystal Som said, moving closer. "These are quantum storage crystals. Each one could hold the entire knowledge of a civilization." "But where did the civilization go?" Hajin asked, his hand never far from his weapon. "Why store their knowledge and then disappear?" Daho had moved to a control panel near the crystal garden. "These power readings are incredible," he said. "The crystals are active, but they're waiting for something." Crystal Song glided to another panel. "The activation sequence is simple. We can begin downloading the stored knowledge immediately." "Wait." Hajin stepped forward. "Something about this isn't right. The patterns leading us here, the power flows, the way the station responds to our presence. It's all too perfect, too planned." "Of course it's planned," Crystal Som said. "This is a repository of knowledge. It's designed to preserve information and share it with visitors." But Daho was shaking his head. "The power signatures, they remind me of something." He pulled up old files on his tablet, comparing them to his current readings. "I've seen something like this before in old case studies from engineering school. About consciousness transfer technology." A heavy silence fell over the room. Consciousness transfer was a controversial technology that had been banned in most of known space. The ability to move a mind from one body to another had led to too many abuses, too many stolen lives. "That's impossible," Crystal Som said, but there was a note of uncertainty in its translated voice. "The station is too old." Consciousness transfer technology didn't exist 5,000 years ago. Unless, Jisoo said slowly, unless this station is where it was invented, and where it went wrong. She walked around the crystal garden, studying the patterns carved into its base. These aren't just decorations, she said. They're the same as the patterns throughout the station, but more complex. They look almost like neural patterns, brain wave recordings. Hajin felt his skin crawl inside his environmental suit. The people who built this place, they're in the crystals, aren't they? Their minds, their memories, everything they were. And the station wants more, Daho added, understanding dawning in his eyes. That's why the power flows inward, why everything leads here. It's not sharing knowledge, it's collecting minds. Crystal Song moved back from the control panel. If you are correct, this technology is beyond anything we imagined. Think of what we could learn. Think of what it could do to us, Hutchin interrupted. The patterns, the power fluctuations, our dreams. It's been preparing us, trying to make us accept what it wants to do. Captain Tawan had been quiet, listening to all of this. Now he spoke. We're leaving. Now we'll send unmanned probes to study this place. No more direct contact. But as they turned to leave, the crystal trees began to pulse faster. The blue light grew brighter, and the door they had entered through slowly started to close. Run, Hajin shouted. The team sprinted for the door, making it through just before it sealed shut. Behind them, they could hear a high-pitched whine building up, the sound of massive amounts of power being channeled through the crystal trees. They ran back along the corridors, following their emergency beacons. The walls around them seemed to ripple now, the patterns moving visibly, no longer trying to hide their nature. The station had revealed its true purpose, and it was hungry. The power levels are off the scale, Daho called as they ran. It's like the whole station is waking up. They reached the airlock just as all the lights in the corridor turned bright blue. The same blue as the crystal trees. The same blue they had all seen in their dreams. Once back on the ship, Captain Tawan ordered immediate departure from the station's vicinity. As they pulled away, their sensors recorded a massive power surge throughout the structure. In the observation room, the crew watched as the station's perfect silver surface began to glow with that same haunting blue light. Patterns like the ones on the walls now covered its entire exterior, no longer microscopic, but huge and clearly visible. It's not just a station, Jisoo said softly. It's a trap. A perfect patient trap, waiting for curious visitors to investigate it. And we almost fell for it. But we didn't, Ha-Jin said, because we listened to our feelings, to our instincts. Crystal Song's crystalline body had taken on a subdued, darker coloration. Perhaps it said slowly, there is value in these illogical human feelings after all. Logic told us the station was safe. Intuition told you it was dangerous. Intuition was correct. They watched as the station's glow faded, returning to its perfect, innocent appearance, ready to wait for the next curious visitors. But now they knew its secret, and they would warn others. That night, for the first time since discovering the station, none of the crew dreamed of it. But they all knew that somewhere out there, in the darkness between the stars, it was dreaming of them. 3 days after their escape from the station, the crew of the Stellar Pioneer gathered in the ship's main conference room. The wall screen showed detailed analyses of everything they had recorded. Captain Tawan stood at the front of the room, looking at his tired but determined crew. What we discovered isn't just dangerous, he said. It's a threat to all spacefaring races. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before we warn others. Jisoo stepped forward, activating the main screen. I'd analyzed the neural patterns we found in the central chamber. They're not just recordings, They're complete mental maps of thousands, maybe millions of individuals. The screen showed complex wave patterns that looked like tangled threads of light. Each pattern is unique, like a fingerprint, but they're all connected to each other through the crystal trees. It's like a giant shared dream. Not a dream, Daho said quietly. A prison. He brought up his own data on another screen. The power system wasn't just collecting energy, it was collecting consciousness itself. The station doesn't just preserve knowledge, it preserves entire minds. Hejin watched the patterns swirl on the screen. But why? Why trap people instead of just recording their memories? Crystal Song, who had been unusually quiet since their escape, moved forward. Perhaps it was meant to be a gift. Its crystalline body showed patterns of deep thought. Imagine a way to live forever, to share your knowledge directly with others, to be part of something greater than yourself. But it went wrong, Jisoo said. The patterns we saw, they were all identical at the edges, where they connected to each other. Like the individual minds were being smoothed out, made to fit together. They lost themselves, Hejin realized. The price of immortality was individuality. Daho nodded. The station offers eternal life, perfect preservation, shared knowledge, but it takes away free will. Everything flows to the center, becoming part of one giant collective mind. The captain turned to Crystal Song. You've been studying the station's age. What have you found? The meridian's crystalline surface flickered with uncertainty. The dating is problematic. The station appears to be 5,000 years old, but some of its technology is far more advanced than that. It's as if it's been upgrading itself, Daho finished, learning from each new visitor it captures, getting better at luring more people in. Jisoo pulled up new images on the screen. Look at these patterns from the outer hull. At first, we thought they were random, then we thought they were warnings. But they're neither. She zoomed in on one section. They're stories. Millions of microscopic stories etched into the hull, visible only if you know exactly where to look. Stories about what? Hejin asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. About perfection, about eternal life, about joining something greater than yourself. Jisoo's voice was soft. They're advertisements written by the trapped minds to lure in more victims, like a spider's web made of promises. Captain Tawon looked around the room. How many more of these stations might be out there? How many civilizations have they consumed? No one had an answer, but they all felt the weight of the question. Somewhere out in space, other stations might be waiting, perfect and patient, offering immortality while hiding the true cost. We need to warn everyone, Hejin said. Not just about this station, but about what to look for. The signs we noticed, the too-perfect preservation, the power flows, the patterns. The dreams, Daho added. We all had dreams about the station. It was trying to prepare our minds, make us more accepting of what it wanted to do. Crystal Song moved to the center of the room. I must admit something, it said. Its translation device seemed to struggle with the emotion in its thoughts. I was wrong about human intuition. Pure logic would have led us to activate those crystals. We would have been trapped, just like all the others. The meridian surface showed complex patterns of regret and understanding. My people have always believed that emotions are a weakness, that pure logic is the path to truth. But your feelings of wrongness, your instinctive fears, they saved us all. Not just us, Captain Tawon said. They may save countless others once we spread the word. He turned to his crew. I want a full report prepared. Everything we saw, everything we felt, everything we discovered. Other ships, Other crews need to know that when humans say something feels wrong, they need to listen. Over the next few hours, they worked together to document everything. Jisoo detailed the neural patterns and the hidden stories. Daeho explained the power systems and their true purpose. Hudjin described the security implications and warning signs. And Crystal Song added its own analysis, acknowledging the vital role that human intuition had played in their survival. As they finished their report, Captain Taowon added one final note. The greatest danger lies not in what we can see, but in what we can feel. The station offers perfection, but perfection isn't natural. When something feels wrong, listen to that feeling. It might save your life. They transmitted their findings to the Galactic Council with the highest priority marking. Within hours, warnings were being broadcast throughout known space. Ships were ordered to avoid any stations matching the description. Research teams were assembled to find ways to detect similar structures at a safe distance. A week later, as the Stellar Pioneer prepared to leave the area, they received word that 2 more stations had been found in distant sectors. Both had been quarantined immediately, thanks to their warning. In the observation room, Hojin and Daeho watched as their ship moved away from the station for the last time. Its silver surface still gleamed perfectly in the starlight, still beautiful, still deadly. You know what's strange? Daeho said, part of me still wants to go back. Still wants to know what secrets are hidden in those crystals. Hajin nodded. That's the trap. It offers everything we think we want. Knowledge, immortality, perfection. But sometimes the price is too high. The real perfection, Jisoo said, joining them at the window, is in being imperfect. In having feelings we can't explain. In trusting our instincts even when they don't make logical sense. Crystal Song glided up beside them. My people will be studying these events for generations, it said. We have much to learn about the value of what we once dismissed as primitive instincts. They stood together, watching as the station grew smaller in the distance. It would continue its patient wait, perfect and hungry, but now ships would know to stay away, know to trust their feelings of unease. Know that sometimes the most important warnings come not from sensors or scans, but from the simple human feeling that something isn't right. Captain Taowon's voice came over the ship's comm. Course laid in for home, everyone. Let's go tell our story. As the Stellar Pioneer jumped to faster-than-light speed, Hujin thought about all the crews they had saved, all the minds that would remain free because they had listened to their feelings of wrongness. Sometimes the most powerful human technology wasn't technology at all. It was intuition. And somewhere behind them, in the darkness between the stars, the perfect station continued its endless spin, its crystal trees pulsing with the dreams of the trapped minds within, waiting for visitors who would never come.